Hi, I'm Allison Price. I'm with New America, a think tank in Washington, D.C., and we are thrilled to be part of Journey Home's webathon today. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking to you, or talking with you, hopefully, if you ask us some questions via the YouTube link, about civic innovation, working with Journey Home, how Journey Home has embraced innovation and bold new ideas on how to improve the provision of services or public services. And I'm joined today with my colleague and friend, Noah. And Noah Harlan. Noah, do you want to introduce yourself and your firm a little bit, and we'll jump on into it?
Sure. I'm Noah Harlan. It's great to be here today with Journey Home and everyone. I'm a founder and partner with a company called Two Bowls. Two Bowls is a company that focuses on how to build digital solutions. We help organizations, entities, governments, businesses think about digital strategies for how to deliver services better. And then we have the capabilities to build those. We've done a lot of work in the public space, both here and internationally. We've done a lot of work in open source, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit today. And we were really thrilled to partner with New America on several projects, the most recent and most significant of which is the project we're here to talk about today.
Baltimore. So just a little bit of background here. So New America, where I work, interesting name, but New America, I'm part of a team at New America called Digi for short, and we work on digital governance and impact. And so basically, what does that mean? It's a lot of jargon. We develop technology platforms with partners such as Baltimore, such as Journey Home, such as Two Bowls, that really transform the way that institutions deliver value for citizens. Again, lots of jargon there. So we're going to break down about why civic innovation is important, why not-for-profit tech is important, and why we work with partners in government, the private sector, and technology firms to create interoperable technology solutions that really address key challenges facing the public sector. So today, we're going to talk about our new project with the City of Baltimore, which is My Digital Data Locker. And Noah and his team are the architects behind that. So we will get into a demo of the solution, which we think is fascinating and has lots of potentials for improving services across cities and states. But what we wanted to do a little bit first is talk about the ethos behind civic innovation and why we're so excited to be working with Journey Home, and why an organization like Journey Home is so on the front lines of piloting and experimenting with public technology solutions that really could make a difference. So in the case of My Digital Data Locker, obviously we'll get into it in greater detail. The challenge that we're addressing and that Journey Home is addressing with us is that missing documentation for individuals is really one of the primary reasons why it's difficult to access services. And is there basic technology that can be used to help people better establish eligibility and to access services that can help them along the way in their journey? And I think, all of us have cell phones, or most of us have cell phones, and you can do pretty much anything on a cell phone these days. Why is it so hard for citizens to interact with their cities, with the institutions that are created to help them? Why is it so hard to establish eligibility, to establish identity, to be clear about what you're eligible to do, when we can easily play? I'm really bad at all internet games, but like Angry Birds seems pretty complicated. Storing your data should not be complicated in a secure way that helps people access city services. So Noah, I know you have many profound thoughts on this topic, but I really was hoping you could set the table about what tech's role is in working with cities and states to really think through the future and how to do a better job of providing services.
Sure. I think that there's sort of two counterweights that are pulling in opposite directions. And as is so often the case, like the sweet spot is in the middle. I think that government exists at a scale that is obviously very, very large, especially in a big metropolitan area, big cities, big states. They're trying to address the needs of so many different people, and they're trying to do it at such massive scale that they've had to build systems over a long period of time. And a lot of those legacy systems were built in a kind of pre-internet age or an early internet age. And so it's very hard to extend those systems. We saw that when they tried to roll out unemployment top-ups as part of the support around coronavirus, and how many states really struggled just to give you more money that was being poured down the funnel. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have kind of tech utopianism. Like, wouldn't it be great if the entire world was all digital all the time? And neither of those represent the world as we know it today. And I think that one of the challenges, and I think where organizations like Digi at New America are pushing us to be better, is to say, can we apply the best practices that have come about over the last 15 or 20 years of digital innovation, and can we bring them into the public sector so that signing up for services, accessing those services, accessing our information, interacting with the government is as seamless as it is in so many other circumstances. Totally. Like, I can go and get insurance from Geico or Progressive or whomever my insurance provider is with a few simple clicks, and they get all the information they need. Why shouldn't any other type of service be provisioned that easily? So I think that's sort of where we started from.
But tech shouldn't be limited to the private sector, Noah. I think we both agree to that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There was a fascinating kind of case study in old versus new in 2013 when the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, that portal launched, and it notoriously stumbled right out of the gate. And then what got less attention was the fact that pretty quickly, over the course of a few months, it got turned around. Now, what happened there was it was built originally in a classic big government procurement way. They kind of said, let's define the entire ecosystem of everything this thing must do at all times. Let's write it all down in advance. We're going to make lots of guesses about what people want to do here. We're not going to ask people what they need to do. We're smart enough. And of course, they launched it and the whole thing fell over. And what they were lacking was something called user-centric design, and user-centric thinking. And what they then did is a handful of people, and it's a small handful, got into a house in suburban Maryland and started fixing it piece by piece by piece. And if you go to it now, it is a great modern service. It's easy to look it up. It's easy to sign in. And I think that it's an object lesson in how if you bring the right people, the right thinking, and the right technologies, you can really provision services at massive scale that most people can access.
Yeah. So I think with this conversation, it's kind of funny because you and I come at this from two totally different places, but we kind of end up at the same place, meaning I'm more on the policy side of life and you're more on the technology side of life, but that we both really agree in the prioritization of user-centered design, an iterative process. We don't have to go that techie because it'll bore people to bits, and exciting Journey Home Webathon. We won't get into too much tech. But why we applied user-centered design, an iterative process, and we went through an open source. Again, we could get an open source if people are interested to address this challenge with Journey Home. So let me do a little bit of scene setting about the challenge for the solution that we worked on, or we're working with Journey Home on. And then I think folks would really be keen to see this solution. To take a step back for a moment, this was the solution we're talking about is My Digital Data Locker, for those who are just joining us. And we conceived this with the city of Baltimore and the city of New York about the same time, and it was long before the pandemic. So the before times, I don't know if we have like a cultural nomenclature for that yet, but I'm going to go with this was all thought through in the before times. But during the pandemic, I think that cities like Baltimore and partners like Journey Home have really seen that the pandemic is presenting a window for change, or an actual opportunity for change, for governments or not-for-profits to really conceive and implement new solutions that work better for people. And that's kind of where our team comes in terms of this collaborative approach to build this piece of tech, My Digital Data Locker. So the challenge that the cities, in terms of, again, Baltimore and New York both kind of conceived this around the same time, was what I stated before about the missing documentation being one of the primary reasons that people have difficulty in establishing eligibility for an application for benefits, for services. And then if you look at that even more narrowly, that individuals or families who are seeking public housing or related services, services that can help end homelessness, it's really difficult, or it's not easy, depending on how you look at it, to retrieve or produce those documents that are required to establish eligibility. Documents might be in a different place, documents might have been lost, documents might have been stolen. How could we make this path easier for everyone? So our goal was to say that missing documentation makes lengthy processes, meaning applying or establishing eligibility for services, more time consuming and arduous for everyone. Harder for Journey Home, harder for the city, harder for individuals. So for us, that left a big window of creating value in terms of helping people regain time, regain dignity, empower folks with having control over their own data. And during the pandemic, as we've noted, supporting individuals and families experiencing homelessness has become a bit more challenging. We don't need to go into all the socioeconomic factors of public health and economics right now, but having a digital solution that people can access via a phone or a computer was really appealing to everyone involved. And that led to us working with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, Journey Home, our partners at Kaiser Permanente, at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, our friends at Amazon Web Services, our friends at Rockefeller Foundation, and our friends in the Mayor's Office in New York of New York City Opportunity, NYC Opportunity. What Noah and his team did with that massive kitchen table of partners is create an open source solution that's free to use, that really helps residents, in this case in the city of Baltimore, access solutions that can help end homelessness. We're doing a pilot program right now that we're integrating with Journey Home with the Rapid Rehousing Program. And it really facilitates the management and sharing of personal documents with case managers and Baltimore City agencies. It's intended to improve the provision of services, and it's intended to make life easier for those seeking emergency services. From our perspective, and you guys can judge because Noah's going to demo it, it's simple, it's free to use, and most importantly, it's secure, given the sensitivity of the documents that we're working with. Noah, I guess my question is, do you want to add anything? Do you want to jump into the demo? We could talk about it more after the demo?
Yeah, I mean, I think just one thing I want to add is that my business partner has described COVID as like the Cambrian explosion for provisioning of digital services. There's a lot of organizations that said we can't do this digitally before COVID, and then their offices closed, or people couldn't go out into the field. And we've seen this a lot in health. Telemedicine was this area where they were like, oh, there's no way we can do all these things remotely. And guess what? It turns out once people had to think about doing things at a distance or more safely, they suddenly were able to. I think it's a similar thing in government, that there's a lot of institutional lock-in in organizations for the processes that have been developed over time. And there's a caution and resistance to adopting new technologies, adopting processes that are different, or that evolve the way things have always been done. And I think that COVID really provided a kind of spark that would force that in. If the office that's provisioning benefits is closed, well, then you have to come up with another way to do it, because you can't stop provisioning those benefits. It's the moment of maximum need and the hardest moment to provision those benefits. And so I think that there's a really exciting moment as we come out of COVID now, and it's such a great optimistic moment where there's a lot of resources available now with a lot of the recent legislation. And there's a lot of, I think, a lot of change in mindset from the past year about what could or could not be done. And that's really exciting. So.
Yeah, it's very hard to find exciting things about the pandemic because lots of bad things. But I do think you're right that people are more open to innovation and creativity, and that there needs to be bold new ways to look at things and to work together to solve community solutions, like no doubt. I always want to have revisionist history. And I wonder if we would have as much success in terms of the urgency of developing a tool like my digital data locker in the absence of the pandemic, which again, that's a total parlor game about reinventing history. But I do think not just from Baltimore, but from a number of cities and states across the country, it's not just technologists anymore looking to make more well-run, efficient systems. It's just not acceptable anymore. Or I don't know if it ever was, but it's even more glaring. It's a more glaring area where I think that there's philanthropic support and eagerness from technologists such as yourself to come up with solutions that really benefit the public, and that feels different than it did in the before times, if that makes any sense. Okay, Noah's gonna run through the demo really quick. If you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube. We will get them and we would love to address them live. And then after the demo, we're gonna take a little break from the webathon and we'll be back in a few minutes, but I will announce that after Noah does his demo. Noah, do you wanna take controls of the screen?
Yes, give me half a second.
Awesome. Tech, isn't it awesome?
All righty, here we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Whoops.
If it helps you, I could see your screen when you did that.
Okay. Are you able to see the data locker?
Yep, totally.
Okay. Good.
It's the Baltimore welcome screen.
There we go. All right. It was hidden behind another screen for me, so I suddenly thought I was showing everyone my inbox, which would terrify everyone.
Or it could be exciting too.
A thrilling fun ride. All right. So here we go. So this is the solution we built. And just to give you a context on this, this was done very fast. We started it in August and we had it ready to deploy by December. And in that user-centric mindset we talked about before, the goal was, what is the thinnest thing we could make? What is the leanest thing we can make? What is a tool that will solve the problem? And what will do it in a flexible way so that it's not locked into exactly the way Baltimore does it or exactly the way New York does it, so that as many municipalities as possible can benefit from the investment that Rockefeller and the others have put into this, so that it really is a public good and it's extensible. So this is our landing screen for Baltimore. What you can see is just a simple intro, and of course our Journey Home friends are noted there. For someone who's using the service, if they click login, they're brought to a login screen, and this should all look just like you would expect it to. There's a sign up button and a sign in button. If you've never used the service before, then you'll need to click the sign up. And the sign up is just enter your name, email and password. For the purposes of this, I'm going to use a demo user. Before I show you anything, don't worry, this is all fake information for demonstration purposes only. None of this is real information. There's no private information being shared here. We don't have access to any of the private information that's in the system. We cannot view those files, only the users can. So if I sign in as our friend Rachel Morgan here, you're brought to a page where you can see, as it loads up, there we go. Rachel can see the files that she's uploaded into her data locker. If this were her first time, she'd be invited to upload a document for the first time. This is a website. It's mobile responsive so that you can access it from any smartphone. And of course, you can access it from the desktop. You can look at these various documents. You can see the names, the description, when they were added, and you can download those documents. This means that this can kind of become a permanent store. So once you've put a document in here, you can now put your permanent version of it somewhere safe, and you don't have to drag that around. If you need to print this out, if you need to provide it to someone later on, you can always get it from the data locker again. If you click on any one of these, it brings you into the details. You're able to see a full-size image of the document in question. So you could read any information off of it. If there's a description, that's available down below. And you can edit, delete, or download. Editing allows you to change the name. So let's call it our October bill. And we'll click done. And now that's been updated. I can delete it. And if I were to delete a file, which I'm not going to do with this file, it removes it for not just me, but anyone else in the system, and it permanently deletes it. So the user always has control over the system. And finally, once again, I can download it. If I go back to the dashboard, the main functions that I have are up here on the right: add and share. I'll click add, and on the desktop, it brings me to my file browser. On a mobile device, it would take me to either my camera roll or my camera itself, so I could take a picture of something and upload it. Sorry, just one quick second. So if I click one of these documents, sorry, there's a small family emergency happening in the background. Of course, this is the moment for that. Let's upload a new water bill. So I'm going to click upload, and I'm going to add that this is my November water bill. Click done, and that file is being added. Upload complete. It appears up here with today's date for when it was added, the name I've given it. It's generating a preview. If you click into the document, you can see the details of it, and of course, all the other features. If I delete that document, that file will now be gone from the system, and nobody will have access to it. So those are the sort of adding features. But the key thing here is we want to share documents. So if we click our big share button, I can select all or some of these documents to share. And when I click next, it brings me to a screen where I can choose who I'm going to share it with. So let's say that I'm trying to share it with a city agency so that I can access some benefits. The city has the ability to set who can receive documents. That's a safety feature so that people don't phish users and try and lure them into providing documents to fake email addresses, or that a city employee who is acting nefariously couldn't say, hey, why don't you send that to my personal email address? And it would have to go to a whitelisted email domain. In this case, we're going to send it to our friend, Amelia Young. This is, again, a dummy account, why it's Two Bowls and not Baltimore City. You get a confirmation screen showing which documents you're sharing and with whom. And if you click done and wait a moment, sharing is complete. If I go into this little tab here on the top left and click shared, you can see all of the folders of documents that I've shared over time. Click into the most recent one, and you see driver's license and gas bill. Those are the ones that I shared, and they're right there. So I always have a record of that. If I go up into the account role, There's a feature here, single feature. It's called Who Can Access Your Account? And this is a really powerful tool. We know that people who are accessing benefits are working with caseworkers. They're working with, they may have spouses or caregivers or other people that they would like to provide access to their files so that they can help them obtain those benefits. Someone who, let's say that someone doesn't have access to technology themselves, or is less familiar with it, or is some sort of other impediment to being able to use the system, they can simply say, here are my files, and I'm going to provide you access to my account as a delegated user, and then you would then be able to help me out. So for example, I can invite Noah Two Balls, and I'm given a confirmation screen saying that they'll be able to manage and share files, but of course I can always take away those privileges. So I'll say, sure, let's give access. An invitation's pending. Once I were to accept that, I know then I would now have access to this account to help her in accessing benefits. Of course, you can also remove access at any time. And once I remove access, that person can no longer have access to any of my documents or files, and they'll no longer be able to see them. Coming back to the home screen, the other really cool feature around privacy and transparency is the activity log. When you click that, you're able to see everything that's happened with the files in your account. So if we look back earlier this afternoon, you can see that we looked at a file. You can see we edited the details of a file. We added a file. We looked at that file. We deleted that file. We shared files and with whom. We invited someone, and we've removed someone from our account. So everything that's happened in your account is always tracked so that you know what's happening with your data. And if someone else is looking at those files, you would see that there as well. If we scroll down a little further, you can see that Amelia Young accessed a file, Ian Arnold accessed a file. That shows that we're able to see everything that's happened, whether they downloaded it, accessed it, added, shared, etc. So those are the functions for the primary user. The primary user is the citizen, the resident. If I click sign out, just take them back to our login screen. I'm going to quickly show you two other use cases. Those use cases are very simple. The first one of those two is the CBO, the community-based organization. So this is someone who has delegated access. If I click get started, I'll sign in as a different user this time. So I'm going to sign in as Ian Arnold. And if I click sign in, I am brought to a screen where I can see everyone whose account I have access to. And in this case, it's just Rachel. If I click into Rachel, it now looks exactly like it did when I was Rachel. The only real difference here is if I click the activity, instead of saying that I did all these things, it says Rachel did those things. I can investigate the documents, I can share them, I can add them. But the one thing I can't do, as you'll see, is I can't delete a document. Only the client can delete the document. And of course, if I click switch clients, I'm brought to a screen where I can select other clients to manage. If I click manage accounts, I can remove access to someone's account. So I no longer will have access to it. Of course, they can remove me from having access. If I remove myself, I can't add myself back in. Only the user can provide access to their own documents and files. If I sign out from that role, the last one I'm going to show you is what it looks like for someone working for a city agency. Once again, similar login, but here I'm at agency services. If I click get started, I'm going to sign in once again as a different user. This time our friend Amelia Young, who works for the city, the Department of Homeless Services, let's say. And she has a list of every client she's working with. In this case, there's two versions of Rachel Morgan because we have two different Rachel Morgan sample accounts. I'm going to click on this most recent one. And what you see is every batch of files that she's ever shared with me. This is the one from today, from about 6 minutes ago. If I click in there, you can see those two files. I can investigate those files if I just need to get some information from it, or I can download that file to upload into other types of systems. If I look back at some of these olders, you'll see that they're empty, and it's because all files were removed from that folder. Rachel deleted those files from the system, and I now no longer have access to those files. That's as the system should be. So it's very simple from the city agency perspective, just a list of clients that's sortable, and they can dive into any one of those and retrieve any documents they need to proceed with the application for benefits process. So if I click sign out, that completes our demonstration of the data locker. You're on mute, Allison.
I do that all the time, and then I do it live on a webathon. Ugh, new days. Okay, let's take a quick break. We're going to take a break. The folks at Journey Home will jump on in a sec, and we'll be back in a few minutes. We want to discuss a few more things about.
Hi, I'm Winston Phillip, and I've been serving as the Continuum of Care Board Chair since 2019. The Continuum of Care is a HUD program designed to do a couple of things. Firstly, promote community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness. Also, provide funding for nonprofit service providers and state and local governments' efforts to quickly rehouse homeless individuals and families while minimizing the trauma and dislocation caused to homeless individuals, families, and communities by homelessness. And finally, promote access and use of mainstream programs by homeless individuals and families, and improve self-sufficiency among those folks experiencing homelessness. In other words, the Continuum of Care is a collaboration between 4 stakeholders: the community, the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, HUD, and the COC Board, with the sole goal of making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring.
Hello, my name is Anthony Williams. I am the founder of the Lived Experience Committee, which is part of the Continuum of Care of Baltimore City Journey Home Board. Right now, we currently have 22 encampments throughout Baltimore City of people experiencing homelessness. We also have over 500 people in hotels that were formerly in shelters here in Baltimore City. And with the community support, we could make that outcome a reality. Like, in other words, we don't want homeless people going back to shelters, but we need to support the community to make sure that they go into housing and not back into shelters.
So hi, I'm Lola J, and I am chair of the YAB, which is the Youth Action Board of Baltimore City. The funds from this program will be used to help service youth in Baltimore City who experience homelessness or housing instability. What that looks like is maybe first month's rent, security deposit, buying a couch, helping someone get a crib for their child, or, any emergency services that they may need for their family and themselves.
The Mayor's Office of Homeless Services is excited to be able to scale up our rapid rehousing program and provide 225 families with houses. But we need you to turn those houses into homes. By supporting the Continuum of Care Care-a-thon, we can work together to ensure that children have beds, that families have dinner tables, and that everyone goes into a house that really does feel like it is their home. Thank you.
Noah, thank you so much for that demo. I'm wondering, can we spend a little bit of time about talking about the resources? So, let's not. Let's not do that.
Let's do it.
All right, bye. I think your team deserves a lot of praise, as does Journey Home, for thinking through what this one solution could mean, not just from Baltimore, but for other cities, other states. And again, this was a project that has been sponsored by philanthropic funding. So not all the money in the world to make it biggest, fastest, polished, smartest, whatever. But what we wanted to make it is accessible and replicable. So in terms of accessibility, Noah just ran through that, which he can do with his eyes shut, because honestly, he's done it 10 million times, but so could all of you watching. It's extremely user intuitive. There's only a few pages on that, on the design of the solution he just clicked through, but on every page, you know exactly what your options are. Is it to upload? Is it to share? Is it to go and look at like kind of the notarized solution that Noah was showing in terms of the brain of the solution, about having a record about what has or hasn't been done? It does not need a lot of training to be implemented. Like most good technology solutions, it's pretty user intuitive, but we also talked to a lot of users before we built it. With that said, Noah's team made some demos that exist online, and they're short, because who wants to watch like hours and hours of training on tech solutions? I mean, I do, because I do that for a living. But on Venmo, no, actually, we should post it in the chat at some point here. I should have been more prepared to do that.
On Vimeo, not on Venmo. You can
Oh,
Venmo
I'm sorry,
us,
not on Venmo. I do that all the time. So on Vimeo, there's 4 videos, totally accessible to anybody, about different user paths and how to use the solution. You can see the screens in a similar way that Noah just shared with the webathon. We also, in the solution, which is the one thing that Noah didn't do in the demo, so if I could critique him, on every page in the solution, there's a place if you need help that you can go for help. And Noah, do you want to talk a little bit about why that's important, the FAQs, why we wanted to make it the user experience as easy as possible?
Sure. So I think that cities are not in the business of customer support.
No.
It's not their area of expertise. It's not where they have the manpower. And so if you're going to provision a service, it needs to be intuitive, and you need to do as much as possible to ensure that people can figure things out and find answers for themselves.
Yeah.
As you said, we design it to be intuitive. We do a lot of testing and prototyping. So we'll do a little bit of a design and then put it in front of someone and say, how would you do X? Or can you tell me what you think or feel when you see this?
I witnessed you guys doing this, so I'm just laughing when we debated locations of buttons.
Yeah, and it's really important because, it's a little like when you're in your house and there's some, if you go to someone else's house and you are standing in the kitchen and you just reach for a cabinet and you open it and it's exactly where the glasses, you expected the glasses to be, you're like, that's a person who's that's a person that did that well. And then there's that other house that you go to where you just are opening every cabinet and you're like, why are the glasses in the base cabinet next to the garbage over there? What a weird place to keep them. It's the last place I would look. Well, that right there is why you do this type of testing, because we all kind of know how a kitchen works, but nobody spends a lot of time thinking about how a digital data locker for provisioning public benefits is supposed to work. So you have to test, you have to try, you have to prototype. And the FAQs are all part of that. It's here's all the things we've heard. So we think that these are questions you might be asking us. We've answered them before. So let's capture those answers for you again.
Right. So on each page of the solution, any user can go and click on the About This System, the FAQs. The FAQs link to tech support, an email if they need, if they have a specific question that's not listed in the FAQs, if they want to refer back to the not Venmo, but Vimeo videos. There's certain things in my head that I just always mess up. Venmo is one of them. And there's also the terms of service, which we really do want to note to Journey's Home Credit yet again. It wasn't just about Baltimore and it's not just about Journey Home. So that terms of use or that terms of service can be differentiated to any different jurisdiction. So for example, New York's is probably going to look a little bit different than Baltimore's. To Journey Home and Baltimore's credit, you guys have rolled out first. New York has not rolled out yet, but will do so imminently. But I think that's an interesting way to look at these. We've talked about digital public goods and how do you take something that's open source and replicate it in another jurisdiction. So if I am San Francisco, for example, how hard would it be for me to take a look at what Baltimore's doing and try to do it there? And maybe you can do that in a you can explain that to the audience in a way that doesn't go deep into the tech.
Sure. Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, there's something called open source. And open source is essentially you write a piece of software and then you give it away to the world. And you say anyone can do whatever they want with this. Sorry, kids coming home from school in the background. Anyone can do whatever they want with this. You can put some, there's what's called a license that's attached to it. So there's some restrictions, but for the most part, it's saying, let's all share in this.
Just to be clear, because we did talk about to Journey Homes, the LEAC about this. When something's open source, that doesn't mean like if I upload my driver's license, that becomes open source too, right?
No. So you can think of this as like, if you were building a house, we might say, hey, we're going to make the blueprints available so that anyone who wants to build a house just like this can take the blueprints. But the blueprints don't contain like my jewelry box, and they don't contain like your
glasses
wardrobe
next to your garbage.
Exactly. Those are when we do an implementation of the system. That specific implementation contains the things that are specific. So, one house built off of that blueprint is what we've done for Baltimore, where we're running it as a managed service, and another version that is done differently, where we've essentially built a version and given it to the city to implement themselves, is what we're doing in New York.
Right.
Some other city might actually just take the blueprints and say, we're going to build it ourselves, or we're going to ask someone else who's doing some other piece of technology for us to implement this as part of their system. But it really increases the transparency, and most of you don't realize it, but tons and tons of the technology that you're using every day is open source. You can't go anywhere without it. The phones we have in our pockets are filled with open source technology. There was actually a huge Supreme Court decision about that about a week ago that I'm sure none of you were aware of because you're not geeks like me. But it really is the kind of grease that makes technology work in the world today. But what's exciting is
can I interrupt you for one moment, just because I personally think this. I think projects, especially community-based civic innovative projects, when they're open source, they're actually more secure. And I know that there's like a world of people who agree with that. I know you're one of them, but if you could talk about that a little bit more, about how making the code stronger and having it open so that it's not opaque, that if you have a solution, sometimes it's not open source, it's just really harder to find the flaws or find the risks or any vulnerability threats that might exist. And I think with something like my digital data locker, it was so important to do it in a way that was transparent, that there's accountability with the code, that other jurisdictions can really, even if they don't understand code, like if you're a policy person or a project implementer or a case manager or any of these other things, that there are people that could lift up the hood, is that the right analogy, to the car to see what's going on. Like, I don't know about engines, but I can look at an engine of a car. And in the case of this, I could look at the code behind the solution in a way that's still secure, that's not making anybody's information more vulnerable. In fact, I would say that the solution is stronger.
100%. There's lots and lots of analogies in the fictional world and in the real world for how this works. The canonical example from the fiction world is Star Wars. There's a blueprint for the Death Star, and they have to steal the blueprint because nobody has it. And once they steal it, they're able to study it and find that one vulnerability, and nobody knows about the vulnerability. But if the blueprints were publicly available, then the entire galaxy would have been looking at them, and they would have all gone, hey, that little vent is going to be a problem.
Resistance would have won sooner.
Or they would have, or the
I should not even try to go down Star Wars analogies. I will mess them up deeply.
But a real world example is there's a building in New York City called Citicorp Center. It was built in I think the early 60s, very iconic building with a big sloped roof. And when it was built, the city kept the blueprints on record. Blueprints are publicly available for buildings at the Department of Buildings. And a young woman who was an architecture student at NYU was studying them, and she went to her professor and said, I think we have a problem with this building. She redid all the calculations, and she discovered that if the building was hit with a 90-mile-an-hour wind at just the right angle, the building would collapse. And the building was now completed. And it's an amazing story because she went and your building is going to fall over. And it was because the plans were open, and somebody else who wasn't trapped in the thinking of the people who were building it looked at it with a skeptical eye and said, you have a problem. And this happens every day in technology. And when you have an open source community where anyone can go and look at how you built it, the decisions you made, it makes it more secure because they can find the vulnerabilities and point them out. But it means that you can start to build a community where someone's saying, well, I'm going to use this same technology and take it this way, and I'm going to use the same technology and take it that way. And really the greatest open source thing in history is the internet itself. Right. It's just open source technology on top of open source technology. And it's the reason why any of us can send email to each other or browse web pages, and we can do so reliably and securely because all of this information is published.
So Noah, I know that you and I can keep going forever and ever, but we cannot. We have to let all the other segments today get underway. We wish Journey Home the best of luck with the telethon or the webathon today. Telethon, I'm so old. But my parting comment is that please go check out mydigitaldataLocker.org. To access the Baltimore version, you're going to do baltimore.mydalock, MYDALOCK.org, and it'll bring you to the right page. And please follow the work of New America, Two Bowls, and Journey Home on this front. We really are excited about making this a better system that works not just for the city, for the Baltimore, but for people, in this case, experiencing homelessness across the United States. So thank you, Noah, for joining me today. Thank you, Winston, for this opportunity. And thank you, Journey Home, for being such a great innovative partner.